the man to be given the task to go after Brian Fenton on Saturday?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, he has. Absolutely, and I'd say he'd relish that. Like I've been real impressed with him for the last 2 years. Kind of. Would you describe last year as this sort of his breakout season?
Yeah.
And he was very impressive. And look, he took his goal well the last day. He's a big, powerful unit. He gets around the field. There's no lack of energy. And like, look, I suppose Fenton we've put up on a pedestal, rightly so, because of the footballer, this kind of Rolls Royce thing that he has become. I don't know how he feels about that description. I'm sure maybe he finds it funny, but he is the benchmark for the modern midfielder. Mar has a lot of the attributes that Brian Fenton does, and actually that's you're actually getting me excited about this now. I'm dying to see the two of them really going at it, because again, look, they're both strong enough. They're not going to let the other one isn't going to let the other dominate them in any way. If it's in their minds or physically or anything like that, they'll go at it properly. That's there's a lot of jewels all over the place, but that's a really good one.
The Maroon White Pod brought to you by CityLink. For bookings, timetables, updates, and any other information, head to citylink.ie. You're welcome along to the Maroon White Pod. On today's show, we're looking ahead to Galway and Dublin this weekend, which takes place this Saturday in Pearse Stadium at 3:15, where the Dubs will be coming to Pearse Stadium. In part one of the show, I'm going to be joined by Ciaran Murphy of Second Captains, and then in part two of the show, we'll have Darragh Maloney from RT Sport as well. So a bumper show we have today for all our listeners. Ciaran, Galway man, living in Dublin. Does the half and half jersey come out this weekend?
Unbelievable. I love the way as well, like on Instagram and Twitter, I'm being pictured with this Dublin jersey as if I'm Dublin Murph. Come on here to tell you. I mean, I don't know anything about the Galway footballers, but ask me all day about the Dubs. I know what you're doing, Paul, and I do not appreciate it. Uh, yes, I played with the Dublin Masters last year. This does not mean that there's any half and half scarves, any half and half jerseys being worn. Once I'm not playing for the Dubs, I'm shouting for Galway all the way.
It's actually something I meant to ask you last time you were on when I was only thinking of it. There's actually a large proportion of Galway football supporters in Dublin. It's nearly like it's that day out in Croke Park where I suppose all the Galway people come across and they're meeting with people. But that's why it's special this weekend because there is a large proportion of Galway football supporters in Dublin.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I may have even talked a little bit about it in a roundabout way without you asking me, just how important the GAA is to people who don't live in Galway, and particularly those who live in Dublin, because it is a huge link with home, and there's none even remotely as strong or as potent as the hurlers or footballers or the hurlers and footballers as we've been lucky enough to have at various stages over the last, well, 20 years since I moved up to Dublin. Um, that nothing kind of brings you back together with your school friends or with your family quicker than Galway having to, be up and down to Crow Park 3 or 4 or 5 times over the course of a summer. So I almost feel like there's kind of a selfish part of it nearly to my wanting Galway to go on a run because I know how much fun
Hmm.
there is down the track if Galway do happen to get to Leinster hurling finals and then football quarterfinals, football semi-finals, hurling semi-finals. Like they're all brilliant occasions and they're all really potent and really strong links with home. So I'm making the journey in the opposite direction. Having spent like the first 20 years of my life driving from Galway to Dublin and back, I get to do it with the sun in my rear view mirror going home rather than in my eyes, But that's it's still a lovely journey, and I'm looking forward to it. Actually, kind of an absurd amount, really, in a lot of ways, because. Yeah, I mean it's just kind of the I mean the weather is absolutely atrocious at the moment, but as you get into March, as the championship looms ever larger in our consciousness, it is kind of a sign that okay, the good times are if not around the corner, not too far in the distance.
Do you still always kind of look forward to that journey? Because in most cases, it probably is for a match in some sense.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And the days when you kind of drive down in a hurry on a Sunday morning and have to drive back on a Sunday evening for if you're doing that drive for anything else, it's probably a bit of a pain, but I'm very lucky. I've a couple of brothers who live in Athenry and another in Oranmore, so I can kind of park the car there and they can do the annoying bit of getting across to Tultill, and then they can drive me back through the traffic until it clears a little bit for me to get home. So I kind of have the best of both worlds in that respect. But yeah, oh no, absolutely. I mean, it is different in the summertime. Like I was down for the Mayo game, and there that kind of the sense of anticlimax, nearly the sense of it kind of being a bit of a toothless game. I don't know where that came from, but it was in the stands from early on that day. Um, so I'm hoping there'll be a bit more bite to it this Saturday.
Has there been a bit of slagging going on in Temple Oak this week?
Not really. Like, see, this is the thing. It's, you know, I have some thoughts about the National League and kind of where exactly it stands. I mean, Galway need another point, probably,
Yeah.
maybe another two just to be absolutely certain of relegation. But I mean, it's hardly a trapdoor either. When you look at the spring that Galway have had, if we were to end up relegated from Division One, I don't think any Galway supporter is going to take it as a complete disaster, or maybe the disaster that we might have looked at it being even 2 or 3 years ago. Like the injury profile has been so ridiculous, really.
Yeah.
So devastating to kind of our chances of feeling even a remotely recognizable championship 15 in this league that we have 5 points. We might end up with 5 points. Maybe that's enough. Maybe it's not. And we'll see how desperate Kerry are to reverse themselves out of a league final maybe next week. But there's no reason for Dublin or Kerry to be afraid of a league final because they're going to walk their provincial championships anyway. Or it's certainly going to be a lot easier for them to win it than it will be for Galway or Mayo to win Connacht, or for any of the Ulster teams to win Ulster. So they don't have this the sword of Damocles hanging over their head that getting to a league final is actually a complete disaster. Mayo and Derry could be hilarious this weekend. I mean, it could be a 0-0. Like, do either of these teams want to win this shagging thing? So kind of factoring all that in, I don't know how intense the build-up has been. They've been maybe it's respect for their elders that means no one's been talking to me about Galway-Dublin. I presume that's the case. I'm going to go ahead and presume that's the case. But like, what do Galway want from this league? It would be great to stay up in Division One. If we got relegated, I don't think it's I actually really don't think it's a major deal. And I think what we're seeing in this league this year is teams trying to learn the lessons of last year.
Yeah.
Because last year was obviously the first season where there was a full league campaign straight into the provincial championships and then into the All-Ireland kind of, whatever you want to call it, the quarterfinal group stages. So there's so much football to be played over the course of the next 16 weeks. Is this weekend the important weekend for the Galway football team? Is next weekend? There's no doubt, but they're the two least important games that Galway are going to play in the time that's remaining in the Intercounty Championship this Intercounty season this year. So taking all that in, it is different. I think that we were stung with injuries in a high summer last year. Absolutely. Mayo won their league final and then lost to Roscommon the following week. Derry had been going, all out. Just non-stop football until last Saturday week when the Dubs came to Derry and they picked half a team. So everyone's in that boat now of trying to figure out when do we pull the handbrake up on this league campaign and actually just give up on it entirely. Galway aren't in that position, but by the same token, they're still getting so much football into kind of the players that will probably end up being the fringe players, the last 5 or 6 subs in the 26. The Galway are getting plenty from this league, even if it ends in relegation. I don't know if that's a widely held belief. I don't know if that's what you're hearing from your friends. I don't know if that's what you think yourself, but certainly I'm looking at this league and going, what will be will be. from Galway's perspective. I would take relegation in a heartbeat. Not if you told me that Galway would get out of the group stages and into an All-Ireland, sort of, into the last six, let's say, or like bypass the round of 12 or whatever and get straight into an All-Ireland quarterfinal. If you told me we could get in there with no guarantee that we'd win another game with Damien Comer, Sean Kelly, Shane Walsh, Paul Conroy, Killian McDade, Liam Silk, Matthew Tierney, Rob Finnerty, all of those guys fit. I mean, I'd just take that straight away and I wouldn't care who we draw. It's literally a case of get through to that stage, make sure and skip the preliminary quarterfinal and try and, be in that kind of the top four that qualifies as of right for that quarterfinal and take our chances from there.
Yeah, because I know every team has injuries, but like as you're mentioning the names there, and I've nearly been mentioning the names, there's no other team in Division 1 missing the amount of players that go there at the minute. But just one thing on this Galway-Dublin game this weekend, obviously we don't know who's going to be fit because it's nearly like a guesswork exercise before a Galway game now. But none of this Galway team have ever beaten Dublin in League or Championship. In this decade, it hasn't happened. I'm not sure as it happened in the decade before. Like it's been quite a while since Galway have beaten Dublin.
Oh, well, I'm in Dublin long enough to remember the day Owen Kincannon went completely crazy in Parnell Park. I want to say 2008.
Yeah.
2008 or 2009, maybe. 2009, I think maybe we drew a game around that time as well. I remember Ciaran Whelan coming to Tuam one time as well, way back. This might be pre-98 even. And we got a draw against Dublin that day. But yeah, it's been a long, long time since Galway beat Dublin. And we haven't beaten them in the championship in a long, long time. It's been a very, very long time. Like it's before 1983. Geez, like we didn't beat them in the 70s. So it like for sure Galway's record against Dublin could be a lot better. How much, the 12 Apostles or the Dirty Dozen, depending on where you are in the country at any given moment. That doesn't matter to this current group of Galway players, but it would be useful for us to nick a victory against them. And there's it would. I mean, it again. How much does it matter? I mean, I think it would matter a bit. It would be a lot sweeter to beat them in a All-Ireland quarterfinal or semi-final later this year. But yeah, I mean, no one has a brilliant record against Dublin over the course of the last 10 years, except for Monaghan, hilariously. So we're not exactly alone in that respect either. I think it would be great for Shane Walsh and Damien Comer and Sean Kelly to have a win against Dublin under their belt. But Sean Kelly might be around this weekend. It doesn't look like the other two are going to be around. So you kind of have to take it on its merits a bit as well. But again, Dublin are rolling now in a way that they weren't last year. But again, I actually don't know how much importance to ascribe to it. I'm like, to be brutally honest, around 2 or 3 of the league last year, Clare should have beaten Dublin in Croke Park. And Clare aren't getting out of Division 3 this year, but Clare absolutely bottled it. Their own players to tell you that. Owen Cleary was talking in the Irish Examiner about kind of the regrets he had about that game even last week. And Dublin finished the year as All-Ireland champions coming from Division 2. So Dublin do look very good at the moment. And the display against Kerry was, it was frightening. And it was really, really good. But I'm still looking at it going, I'm not going to get too excited about this. I'm not going to get too excited about beating half a team up in Celtic Park either. Because who knows what Derry's motivations are. We'll get a better idea after they've played Mayo this weekend. But so I wasn't getting too excited when Dublin were nearly losing to Clare last year. I'm not going to get too excited this year when they're hammering teams and, Fenton's rolling and Con is rolling. I mean, for all that Dublin have looked great this year, if you took Fenton and Con O'Callaghan out of their team and no one else, I mean, think of all the players that Galway are missing. If you took those two players even out of Dublin, then I think Dublin would be a much different, a much weaker team than we've seen over the last couple of weeks. Because those two guys, and Kilkenny, to be fair, and actually Sean Bugler has been really, really good. But and he's not one of the marquee names just yet. But he's a guy I'm looking forward to seeing in the flesh on Saturday. But even if you just took Fenton and Con out of it, how many points would Dublin have in this league? You don't, that's a question as well. So I don't know. Like what are you hearing? What do you think of Galway's league so far? Are you worried by what you've seen, like over the course of the last 6 or 7 weeks?
No, I think Rory Cunningham has been just a massive positive. I was nearly buzzing just after that Monaghan game for the performance he gave because I think our forward play, since we've missed Damien and Shane in particular, we probably haven't had the scoring forward coming through the last while. So I think for him to score 1-3 was huge. But just on that record thing, I feel like it's something Porrick taps into, just the kind of competitor he is, because in interviews and stuff, like he would bring up like previous records and stuff.
He does, yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. Actually, he does. And I don't know, maybe it's something he has ready once the record's been busted, as opposed to something that he would be hammering with the players. I mean, I think Galway have enough to be going on with, enough motivation to be going on with, without mentioning, Ciaran Duff or the '83 final or anything. But yeah, that is true though. Porrick is it can be a weird, like, kind of an anorak about these things in the aftermath of games, that he'll come out with some stat, that record against Ulster teams, or Galway had never won in Clonus apparently.
Yeah.
Until 2 weeks ago, which was something I have to say that was a fact that had passed me by, and had passed plenty of people by. Um, but Dublin are they are the yardstick, and I mean it is well, it's absolutely brilliant, obviously, for Galway GA fans to have like the two yardsticks coming on the one afternoon on Saturday. I mean, I don't know that it's one of those where you can say, well, you know where you stand after you've played Limerick in the hurling league, when they're probably already through to a semi final, and maybe they don't care whether they're through to that semi final anyway. And Dublin have what they have cooking. So I don't know if it's necessarily you can draw a straight racing line from a league game to a championship game, but it is brilliant to have the two best teams coming on the one program to Pearse Stadium, and I hope that there's a big crowd there, because it's a lot of fun to welcome the two All Ireland champions. Um,
It might
and
never
like,
happen again, like this is the
yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah, and I wish it happened more. I mean,
Yeah.
there are very good reasons why it doesn't happen all that often. But it is brilliant to have the double bill. And it's a Saturday afternoon. I know it's a busy time for some people. On the other hand, there's no rush. There shouldn't be a massive rush going home on St. Paddy's weekend. So you would kind of hope that there would be like a bumper crowd there, a proper big crowd there. Um, and kind of have both teams just take a swipe at it,
Yeah.
in a kind of reasonably consequence-free environment, and just whatever about Galway, laying to rest a Dublin bogey or anything like that, just to see Cunningham against against Owen Merchant, for
Yeah.
instance, and whatever about throwing down a gauntlet as a team, for individuals to say, right, well, okay, this is a pretty good acid test for me on a personal level. I've gotten more game time maybe than I thought I was going to get. Like Sean Fitzgerald, for instance. Like for me, Fitzgerald has played his way into the championship team over the course of this league. I've been impressed by him, but also like, let's see how he gets on Saturday. And if he comes out second best, it's not fatal, and I don't think it should be fatal to his chances of playing in the championship, but it is a great learning curve, an absolutely brilliant learning curve for a guy like him, or for a guy like Cunningham, or Cillian O'Curreen. So let's have a look at these guys and see where they are uh, in a situation where it's not necessarily life and death.
Who's been Galway's player of the league so far for you?
Hmm. Well, I can't really look too much farther than John Daly, I think. Um, because he's been, and he's kind of been the linchpin of the team in the absence of all of the other leaders that we have.
Mm.
Um, and he's made mistakes, but I think he is an exceptionally good player. And I think he is very vocal on the field. He's an organizer. And maybe there's been an element of like him kind of being fast tracked into that kind of leadership situation by all of the other absentees. Like I think Fitzgerald has been good. And I was unsure of him just because I hadn't seen a ton of him. But I think he's a player. I think Johnny McGrath. Actually, maybe
Yeah,
Johnny McGrath is the answer to this question.
I
When you
only put
think of
up a tweet just about everyone he
yeah,
marked, and when you're looking at the names, like it's particularly
yeah,
Shane McGuigan, you're like, Jesus
yeah,
Christ, like because you've seen what he's done.
yeah. Darragh Canavan and Shane McGuigan is about as tough a week's work as you can put in as an intercounty
Yeah,
cornerback, and he did exceptionally well on both, like really exceptionally well on both of those. So like they were like that's it, and maybe it's instructive in ways that I've picked three defenders there, in a way that that hasn't often happened with Galway teams over the course of the last 30 or 40 years. Um, but they're kind of the three names that popped immediately to mind because even Cunningham was has obviously been really good and he's been a find later on in the league. Everyone else has kind of had flashes, have done some great things without really saying, okay, this is my jersey. You're going to have to rip it off me. I don't think that's really happened. Like Johnny Heaney's been good the last couple of games, um, but had maybe a slower start than he might have liked. So, yeah, I think Johnny McGrath is probably the answer, really, isn't he? Just when you look, and he's going to have a. I don't know who he's going to be on this weekend, but he's going to have his hands full. Like Fitzgerald is probably physically a better match for Con, but by the same token, someone has to pick up Ciaran Kilkenny as well, and Kilkenny is not exactly a slouch in the physical stakes either. So, yeah, choose your poison there, Johnny McGrath. I think.
so just with the Dubs coming to Pearse Stadium, there's a league final here now that's a real target for them, and they might even want to probably get it wrapped up this weekend, stretch out the goal difference probably, and maybe just I suppose have it in their own hands for that final game against Tyrone. But for you this weekend, what's achievable for a Galway against Dublin?
Well, I don't think we're yet at the state. I mean, I was very fearful, funny enough, before the Derry game, of us getting a proper clipping. Just because Derry had been going so full tilt. Um, Dublin now have a lot of wiggle room, so actually don't know what Dublin are gonna come with. So I don't think it's an absolute impossibility that Galway win this game. I don't think that's the case at all. Um, I think it's probably unlikely on the balance of things, given the absentees that we have. I don't think it looks all that likely, but it's far from impossible. Um, and it does kind of depend. I mean, Sean Kelly has played a half or at least a half an hour in the last two games. I mean, if we're fit to have him for the full game, that is a massive boost for us, defensively and offensively. Um,
Where are you
so I
playing
wouldn't.
him?
Yeah, I mean, like, does Sean Kelly end up playing center forward on this team or wing forward on this team come
Yeah.
championship? If Fitzgerald is your fullback, then that kind of becomes a little likelier, maybe. Um, and or midfield. I mean, there's what's the difference between being named number 10 and number 9 these days? Maybe not as much as we'd think, but I mean, I think he'll be a middle third player for us, and he could easily end up at 10 or 12 for us this year. Um, Now, will that be this weekend? I'm not entirely sure. Given the weapons that Dublin have, maybe Sean Kelly on Sean Bugler might not be the worst idea in the world, and allow John Daly to sweep in front of the two lads inside Kilkenny and Conor O'Callaghan. That may well be how Galway set up this week. and maybe next week with the Cliffords and Sean O'Shea coming down the track. But that may not necessarily be what happens in Championship when we have a few more of our more established names back. So, I think on the balance of probability, Dublin win this game, but you just don't know. You just don't know. Dublin haven't really made a habit of making wholesale changes and resting lads. They might look around the league and say, well, geez, everyone else is doing it, and we're still in a pretty good position here. So maybe Saturday might be the day that they shuffle their pack a little as well. But I mean, shuffle their pack means Jack McCaffrey starts maybe, and maybe the pack might be best left unshuffled in that respect.
I hate to say this, I'm probably nearly clutching at straws by saying it, but it's just when you mention everyone Dublin have who hasn't played, we could see a few faces we haven't. But surely Pearse Stadium conditions this weekend can play like a major difference in this game, because we all know there is going to be some sort of a breeze here on Saturday.
Yeah, it's true. I have never got the feeling that Galway have been super comfortable playing in the breeze, though. Do you know,
Yeah.
I've never felt like we've mastered it, and it's a thing that we can use.
Particularly
You know,
that Mayo game last year is the
yeah,
prime example.
yeah. You're just looking at that going, well, we've played in this even more than Mayo have, and we've never really gotten an advantage from it. And honestly, I don't think there's a way for a team to get used to it, or I mean, you can get used to it, but I don't think that you can actually use it to your advantage in any way. It just spoils games. It's an impact. It's a factor in games, and that's just it. And you have to just roll with the punches as best you can. And if you're a team that's happy in possession as Dublin are, then what use actually is it? Now, by the same token, quite a number of times against Kerry, not so much against Kerry, but against Kerry, I mean, the amount of times Dublin players just got the ball and just said, right, let's just put snow on this and get it into Con and Ciaran Kilkenny. Like, they have gone more direct this year than we've seen them even in the last couple of years under Desi. Like, that evolution of their game has continued. Con is in there now the whole time, pretty much. Kilkenny is in there with him for company now. So, the wind does have an impact on that side of things. I mean, playing against it, you're just not going to get the chance to do that. Playing with it, there has to be a lot of discipline on the ball that's going in, or you just make O'Callaghan and Ciaran Kilkenny spectators, at a tennis game, basically watching the ball sail over their head, and then out for the kick out. So, like it do if you have that in your head as a key kind of plank of your tactical game, then the wind is going to have an impact. But Dublin are so comfortable playing it the other way as well that I don't see Salthill as an advantage for us. It's just a disadvantage for the paying public hoping for a good game of football, really.
And what do we need to turn this into on Saturday if we're to cause an upset?
I mean, I would be certainly more confident of a Galway win if there's 30 scores or less than if there are 30 scores or more. I mean, if you're asking me what is a likely Galway winning score, I would say, kind of a 111 to 13 points, 111 to 12, that type of scoreline. I mean, I think if it turns into a shootout where we don't have the firepower that Dublin have, and we would struggle in a situation like that, I think, and you look at, they've gotten goals the last couple of weeks as well. I think we absolutely need to avoid conceding a goal, and that's an obvious answer in a lot of ways. But if we had a different team lining out, I think it would be less of a factor. I mean, if it turned into a shootout with all of our with a fully loaded team, then I'd be feeling a lot more confident than I would with the team that we'll probably end up with on Saturday. So I mean, I kind of feel like 111, a penalty goal, or the route of 95% of goals in Gaelic football now, which is like a point, an effort on a point that drops short, and Matthew Tierney or someone flicks a ball into the back of the net. Like that is the likeliest route for Galway. I mean, what do we need to turn it into? I mean, what we need is for Brian Fenton and Conor Callahan to be rotated out of the Dublin team. And I will definitely ask for that to happen, but I don't know if anyone's listening to me up here. That's my concern.
Got to spread the gospel so this week and do your best.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I mean, I have been basically pushing for the abolition of the national leagues over the course of the last
Yes,
few weeks.
I wanted to ask you about that actually. I heard you on the Mayo podcast, and
Yeah,
like you made some great points about the league because it's our best competition, but it's absolutely absurd at the minute that like teams are nearly going into games and you're kind of nearly wondering, do they really want to win this? Teams are avoiding the league final.
yeah. I think it's actually terrible, really, because the way you need to look at this now is that the year now is set. There are two. So many people talk about, there are blocks for the league, then the championship, then the club championship, then the. I mean, what we actually have is until the end of July, intercounty football. After July, from the start of August, club football and club hurling. That's the only dividing line that really matters in all of this. So, if you were given a blank page and told we have the intercounty players signed up to play football and hurling until the end of July, and then the club happens after that. And on what planet would you come up with a tournament like the National League? Like it doesn't make any sense. As you say, it's our best tournament if you get like the 8 best teams playing each other and they really want to win, and they're all that. The only reason to keep winning in the tournament is to win a tournament that means something and rewards you. Like you look at Mayo last year, they won the National League. And even as they were winning it, people were saying, well, this could well count against them next week against Roscommon. And it did, and they lost. And so now you have this kind of absurd scenario where 6 points is the dream. You get 6 points, 7 points, then up goes the handbrake. And then you're basically trying to avoid the league final at all costs. There you're out, I think it's a week or 2 weeks after the Division 1 league final. Mayo are on a flight to New York on a Thursday after winning a National League final. Do they want to play that game? They don't. They just don't. So rather than kind of dealing with like, oh, how can we incentivize winning the league? And this is a big thing that happens in hurling all the time. It's like, instead of just, everyone's kind of zoned in on the micro, which is how can we make what we have a little bit better, instead of saying, okay, playing this tournament doesn't make any sense if people don't want to win it. And so what you have to look at really instead is how do we make it, like, how do we actually, we have all this time. We have, and I would say play the colleges. I think the Fitzgibbon and the Sigerson Cup are magnificent competitions. You saw 2 managers both crying, having watching their teams win inside 3 days. You saw the emotion of the players. You saw the emotion of the management. It's a brilliant competition. If for no other reason, everyone who's in it wants to win it, and there's no questions asked. Whereas this idea that what we have with the league is just, it's kind of bizarre. So the way I would see it is you start the All-Ireland Championship on this year it would be the 3rd of March. Start the All-Ireland Championship then. You finish Fitzgibbon and Sigerson by the end of January, first week of February. You start the All-Ireland Championship in March. You play however many games you want to play. And let's make a decision on how many times we want to see the Galway footballers play a game, but a real game. So rather than it being like 7 league games and they're serious for 4 and then they're resting lads for 2 and then you're actively trying to lose the 7th one to avoid a league final. Let's say, and you can bore ourselves to tears talking about various structures and all the rest, but it's literally just that abolish the league. Every game matters in the destination of the All-Ireland Championship, be that Sam Maguire or Liam McCarthy, and sprinkle into that. And, you can have league formats. You can have groups of 6, groups of 8, and, teams play home and away, groups of 6, and you play home and away against teams. All of that can be decided. But you sprinkle into all of that knockout provincial championship football, which is May bank holiday weekend, June bank holiday weekend, and the first week of July. And you play your 3 rounds of the provincial championship. I mean, it has to be 4 in Ulster and Leinster, and you work around that. But you have all this league football that's played, all going towards the All-Ireland final. But then you also play provincial championships, and it's like the FA Cup, where basically if you're out of the running in the whatever league group format you have to allow teams to progress in the All-Ireland Championship, the provincial championship is there as a thing that you can go on a run and win, and for it to be a thing that you just win for itself, as opposed to this idea of the league, which is, oh well, some teams want to win it, some teams don't really care about it, and some teams actively don't want to win it. So I just kind of get that. I get the impression that many inter-county managers kind of like the kind of mezzanine idea of the league, where they can kind of hop off and hop on, and it matters some weeks, it doesn't matter some weeks, and you can kind of cod yourself right up until an All-Ireland quarterfinal. Then it's like, okay, well, we lost, Whereas let's just have a season where everything counts and everything matters, and the National League does not fit in any calendar that you want to draw up in that scenario. Like, the league is the best competition we have if it was a competition that people wanted, but it's not. So we should just get rid of both of them. I mean, the hurling league is a complete joke. The football league is a good competition. Like, Division 2 is, it's a knockdown, drag out fight at the moment, and it's fun. But at the same time, it's kind of, it's still, to avoid relegation, like Donegal and Armagh don't care who wins it in the final analysis. They'll play a league Division 2 final, and they've already moved on to the championship, So I always kind of feel like, I know this is a very long answer, but I always kind of feel like, you hear arguments all the time, oh, I should abolish the league finals, Like, that's just 1 week. Like, the problem is the entire competition, and why, 25%, 50% of the teams in Division 1 don't even want to win it. So if that's the reality, and it has been the reality for ages, and teams are now this year figuring out, okay, being fit in February does nothing but increase the likelihood of getting injuries in June. Then let's talk about it then, at least.
Do you know, during COVID, when we had the 2 groups of 4 and then we had the relegation semi-final, do you think that could work?
I just kind of feel like that's like, like a Band-Aid, as opposed to it actually just being, if you're given a blank sheet of paper now and told we have 6 months, 5 months, whatever, March to the end of July, you've got 5 months to figure out who's the best team in Ireland and hand over some trophies. Why would you have a league? You've got 7 games in 9 weeks, which puts a huge toll on players. There's no actual, the amount of training that happens then is necessarily limited by injuries and what you have to do week to week to get prepared to play these teams. So, like, and then say to take the Mayo example again, last year, they had 7 games in 9 weeks. They qualify for a league final. The league final is the week after. So it's 8 games in 10 weeks. Then there's a championship game, 9 games in 11 weeks. Then they have 7 weeks off. Like, none of this makes any sense. It like
you couldn't write it in any other sport.
No, you couldn't. You just couldn't. So you look at the AFL, you look at the NFL. They have their teams playing whatever. I think it's 17 games in the NFL to get to the playoffs. The AFL play, I think, 15 games to get into their playoffs. I mean, we don't have the space to play 15 games, but like, we should be playing 10 games where it always matters. Like, every game matters, and it's points. And if you have like 10 league games played between March and like the end of June, and then there's July is like the playoffs, however many weeks you have there, if it's 8 games, whatever, there will be times when you get break weeks. There'll be times when you get to rotate your squad against teams that aren't going that well. Like, but that's management, that, like, you take the risk because players need the rest. Whereas now it's just kind of madness, And the second I thought about it in relation to the hurling, then the Football League was kind of ruined for me as well, because I think this doesn't make any sense either. And this year has just kind of confirmed that in my head, that we just need to And, Jim Gavin, there is kind of this temptation now with everything that's wrong with football. Everyone's like, well, listen, Jim Gavin's on it. It's grand. We'll figure it out. Eamon Fitzmaurice, James Horan, the boys will take care of it, But I do think it's worth talking about because, you're asking me about Dublin this weekend, right? And I would love to be able to talk to you and say, Dublin are coming to town. They need the points for X, Y, or Z. Galway desperately need the points. They're going to chance a few injured lads and get genuinely excited about it. I mean, if Galway were to beat Dublin at the weekend, it would be a brilliant result. It would secure our place in Division 1. I would have a lot of fun being at the game. I would go for a couple of pints afterwards. I would feel brilliant about things. And then on Sunday morning, I'll wake up and go, it actually means nothing. If Galway were to play Dublin in an Ireland semi-final, I mean, what does it actually mean? And so I just kind of feel like, people are the amount of people that are talking about the split season. Unfortunately, both of our intercounty managers are very much inclined to talk about the split season and to kind of be running it down. I look at the problems of the split season, and it's far from perfect. But I mean, Henry talking about, college games happening on a Thursday, and it's a complete disaster, and it puts him under pressure, puts the players under pressure. I mean, he played that young McLaughlin lad who broke his hand against Westmeath, even though McLaughlin was down in Mary I, they were always going to go on a Fitzgibbon run this year. He ends up missing out on a Fitzgibbon Cup final because he broke his hand playing against Westmeath, And I'm looking at that going, well, sure, Henry, obviously it is a problem that, we have these lads who have to play colleges in the middle of the week, followed by intercounty games. I get that if the league was an important thing that actually really mattered. But don't tell me that Galway couldn't have beaten Westmeath by 30 points without playing any of the college lads. Or, playing a couple of them, sure, whatever. But intercounty managers do have a habit of giving out about the amount of minutes the players have to play in January and February. But it's only the minutes that they're playing with a team other than their own that they actually have a problem with, because they still end up playing plenty of them when they have a chance to rest them themselves, if you know the point I'm trying to make. So that problem would disappear if you just handed January and the first week of February to the colleges, and we actually got a chance to promote these amazing games. I don't know if, Galway people are actually really lucky. They have, brilliant Sigerson and Fitzgibbon Cup matches happening on their doorstep effectively, with the college. And, if ATU get their act together again and get kind of back up towards the higher, there's brilliant games happening all the time. And we should just be going to them, and let that be the start of the year, rather than kind of being, well, geez, I was in Pearse Stadium on Sunday, or I was in Tuam on Sunday. I can't be going to Dangan on a Wednesday because I'm going to, Nolan Park on the following Sunday. It kind of gets squeezed out for supporters as well. And I just really think that we just need to have that conversation and say, however many games we want our intercounty teams to play, let's make sure they all matter, really, really matter.
Yeah, it feels like this weekend it's going to be reactionary for supporters, but in both of these camps,
yeah,
I don't think they really care about this weekend.
Yeah, and that's a real pity. It's a pity for me as a columnist. It's a pity for me as the host of a sports podcast where you're I would love to do more GAA, but there's you can't sugarcoat it. If you're asking someone how devastated should Donegal be if they miss out on promotion, it's well, not that devastated, and that's it. And at the end of the day, people want jeopardy. They want skin in the game. They want wins and losses to really mean something. And we don't have that. We don't have that in the GAA. We have things that are well, we're not going that well, but, one win in the championship. You listen to Davy at the weekend, Davy Fitz at the weekend, and you're yeah, you got relegated. No one cares. All that being relegated, everyone was super pumped about this hurling league this year that, there's going to be real jeopardy now. No one wants to be in 1B. I mean, ending up in the 1B in the hurling is basically the only way you can guarantee to be in 1A the following year, because two teams go up, you're definitely going to go up. You can't lose enough games in 1B if you're Waterford to not go up. So all it means is you've ensured that the following year you're definitely in 1A. And none of the teams in 1A can say that with any certainty because they could get caught the following year, you know? So there just isn't the jeopardy that you need in sport. And all of these fellas who say, oh, you know, the GA are giving up prime time, they're giving up media coverage, and they're giving up, you know, eyeballs in the summertime to allow the club players play in August. I'm like, that's what they're doing now. Like, you know, the GA are giving up all of this attention now because none of it actually matters at root, you know, and so there's a lot there. There's obviously an awful lot there, but I just feel like that recalibration in our heads that happened a couple of years ago with the hurling round robins, when everyone decided actually trying to yarn the league is complete insanity, is now going to happen in the Football League. So let's have the conversation now rather than sleepwalk through 5 or 6 more seasons before we realize actually this is a kind of a waste of time. You know, we have this set amount of time with our intercounty players, and we're handing over a third of it to this competition that they're trying to reverse out of finals in.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's something for the Football Review Committee to look at, not just the rules, because as you say there, if you have games of jeopardy, it's going to help improve the game of football as well.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more.
Just before we finish, Ciaran, final prediction this weekend.
Oh, oh, Dublin and Limerick. Dublin and Limerick. And then I've given myself loads of room to enjoy the weekend if I get in nice and early and see 2 Galway wins. But yeah, it's kind of hard. It is hard to predict a Galway win, just given as you know, it said ad nauseum the absentees and everything. So yeah, but I'll be supporting Galway, and I'll thank you, Paul, to hide that Dublin that shot of me in the Dublin jersey for future reference. You're killing me on the streets here. That's it's a disaster.
Good stuff. Well, that's all we do have time for in part one of the show, and we'll have Darragh Maloney coming up in part two. But Ciaran Murphy, thanks a million for your time.
Thanks, Paul, as ever. Really enjoyed it.
Now you're welcome along to part two of the Maroon White Pod, where I'm delighted to be joined by RT sports broadcaster Darragh Maloney to look ahead to Galway and Dublin this weekend in round 6 of the National Football League. First of all, Darragh, how's the last few months been for you, commenting on, I suppose, different sports?
Yeah, well, look, we've kind of moved around a bit, but it's been great to be back. I had some annual leave in January and got a few bits and pieces done. But like, sure, the first weekend of the league is the last weekend in January, so we were just delighted to kind of get back doing the games again and traveling around the country. And I suppose like the long winter built up everybody's appetite for it. So yeah, it was just great to kind of be back in the saddle again. It's hard to believe that it's gone so fast. Here we are now with, you know, 2 games to go in Division 1, and it's just staggering that it goes so quickly. And you have teams like, look, obviously, you know, at both ends of the table, and then others stuck in limbo land in the middle. So you know, it's a big game on Saturday night for Galway, just to see how they perform against Dublin.
I'm interested to get your comments here. We Ciaran Murphy from Second Captains in part one of the show. He was very strong where he feels the National League should be abolished because I suppose all the different things that have went on this year in the league. Some teams want to win some games, some teams don't want to win other games. Different teams approaching it different ways. What's your own view on it at the minute?
Well, look, I wouldn't no, how will I put this? I would hugely respect Ciaran's opinion in what he thinks. I've never heard anyone say that before. I suppose maybe I come at it from a different perspective that, you know, like I think in many ways that the league is the fairest competition that we have, in that the teams are all of a similar standard. You know, and you look at that league table and you are where you are. I think there's bigger issues that people need to look at with the fixture schedule, with like, and Galway are a perfect example of this. You know, the amount of injuries that they have, you know, the colleges competitions beforehand, the you know, the O'Byrne Cup and the FBD and all those kind of things. You know, it's a very packed schedule, and I think it's putting a lot of pressure on the players. And you know, that last weekend of the league, Lee Gannon got injured in the Dublin match up in Derry. And Owen McLaughlin got injured for Mayo in the Roscommon match in Castlebar on the Saturday night. I did the commentary on that, and like, these were actually, what was interesting, and again, I don't know the science, the medical stuff about it, but both of those injuries were late enough in the games. So, and I know McLaughlin is a really incredible athlete, Lee Gannon the same, but these are the end of the matches. These lads are all warmed up. Now, you'll get somebody, I'm sure, giving out going, oh, he doesn't know about the physio thing. Absolutely, hands up, I don't. I haven't a clue. But for people to pull hamstrings, like McLaughlin had made 6 or 7 of these incredible 70-yard lung busting runs down the far side, away from the opposite side to where the TV cameras were. But he gets injured at the end. And look at all the players that Galway have injured. Look at all the players that are out. Now, they're trying to manage players back. And that's a real, the stress on the medical people with all the teams at the moment, that has to be looked at. You will get people who say, oh, your man from RTE doesn't like the split season. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, we have to respect the club player. Of course we do. That's the basic unit of the GAA is the club and the parish and family, all of those things. But these guys are at the elite level. I know it's only a small percentage, but this elite level drives everything else. And if we're putting the players in harm's way, the amount of injuries, those kind of hamstring tears, calf muscle injuries, groin injuries, I'd love somebody to look at them in a scientific way, with medical professionals on board, obviously, to try and determine why that is. Why are these things happening? Those two players, Gannon and McLaughlin, would be well warmed up. I know it was cold nights, but is it the heavy surfaces they're playing under? That night in Castlebar, it absolutely spilled rain. There was a bit of rain up in Celtic Park, but both really fine pitches that drain well, but they're heavy surfaces. So that's my take on that. I think I'd like to see it a little bit more spaced out. It's very frantic. I was looking at the Connacht Championship, like London and Galway on the 6th of April. That's just a few weeks away. Then, 2 weeks later, you've the Sligo Leitrim, so the winners of Sligo Leitrim, playing London or Galway. That kind of, so this is all very frantic. And if somebody picks up an injury, Lee Gannon's thing looks like weeks out, and the same with Owen McLaughlin, they look like serious. And I hope that's not the case. But these players know their bodies better than anybody, and both of them kind of pulled up fairly sharpish, and they're like, right, I'm in trouble. So no, I'm a fan of the league. I think you are where you deserve to be in the league table. It doesn't lie, and all those kind of things. I think it's. You see, what Ciaran's saying, if you abolish the league, what do you replace it with? And what do you do then with the championship? I'd love to have the debate with him, actually, and just tease out what way he wants to kind of to go with that.
He was maybe more so staying for the league to kind of become the primary competition, because it is, as you mentioned, it's our best competition.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, look, listen, we've talked about this for years, 8 groups of 4, the Champions League style format, and giving teams matches and all that. And abolishing the provincial championships, maybe, I suppose we're now sort of mirroring what has happened in ladies football, where, the provincial championships, look, it's, it's not Dublin's fault that everybody else in Leinster has fallen that far away. And look, you can have the debate about the funding, etc. And I'm all for that. And all for having that debate, I mean. But when I was growing up, I'm a lot older than you are, a Leinster medal was a precious thing. A Munster medal was a precious thing. A Connacht one. Now, the Ulster medal is the most important of all in terms of the competitiveness, and any of those teams can beat anybody else on the day. I suppose we've moved away from, the open draw type thing. There probably was an opportunity to do that around COVID times, but there's an awful lot of ducks to get in a row before we start talking about abolishing the provincial championships, But I do take Ciaran's point. It is, to me, it's the best competition because it's the fairest competition. Yeah. The teams are all, there's promotion, relegation. We have that now with the Talton Cup and all that stuff. But it's, I think we're a long way away from that. But that's a really good debate. And look, I understand it better now that you kind of teased it out. I probably jumped in with both feet, which is kind of what I do, Paul, as you know. But I think it's worth looking at. All of these things are worth looking at. I'm dying to see what the review of the split season looks like whenever that kind of 3-year period elapses, that they get to review it, and the gaps between the games. The traditionalists still want, the third Sunday and the first Sunday in September. And, losing. I did hear somebody saying the other day, it was on a discussion thing somewhere, maybe a podcast or something, where somebody was talking about that it might affect the sponsors in the GAA, the big corporate sponsors, the huge money sponsors, that, that it's, they're not spreading the product out in a way that would, maximize the marketing and all that stuff. Now, look, I'd like to hear both sides of that, because there's still a big clamor for big blue chip companies, if that's what they're called, to get involved with the GA and sponsor the championship. The GA don't have an issue selling sponsorship for their big competitions, but look, you can always improve those things. That's just life. It's just trying to kind of make things better and tweak it as you go along. But Ciaran's point is a very good one. That now that I understand it better. But look, we are where we are. I'd like to see, from a player welfare point of view, things just kind of spaced out a little bit more to give the players more time, because look at Jim McGuinness talking about, and Davy Burke talking about all the sessions that they've had in Roscommon and in Donegal, and that was going on since October. And then you're into colleges football, you're into the provincial competitions, and then straight into the league. And hopefully you'll be around in July when the trophies are handed out.
How is it for you doing live commentary on matches? Because we can't read too much into some of these games that have been played so far this year. How is it for you, I suppose, when you're speaking with the audience during a live game, not to, I suppose, blow things up?
What, to go over the top with it?
Yeah.
Well, look, I suppose maybe I'm not as good as that as somebody like, say, in the soccer world, George Hamilton or Ger Canning is, that kind of they're able to kind of just build things up. I suppose, look, I've never really thought about it that way. You just kind of, I suppose, call it as you see it. If I always say, like, a bad match on the television is always a bad match. A bad match on the radio you can work with and you can embellish it a bit, and if there's enough noise around you and stuff like that. Like, look, people, GA followers and viewers are very knowledgeable. They know what they're looking at. I don't think we'll ever be, you don't want to overhype something that you just got to let the pictures and the players do their stuff. And look, it's part of, I think it's part of my job to get excited when something exciting happens. Unfortunately, what is happening a lot with the kind of modern Gaelic football is that there's a lot of sort of downtime and lull time, if you like, where the ball has been played around from, one defending 45 to the other and stuff like that, and this kind of swinging the thing from side to side. And you do have to sort of pick your moments as to when something, when you really get stuck into a passage of play. Look, as I think I've said to you before, the basic things for me as the commentator, who's got the ball, what time is it, what's the score, and a bit of shouting and hollering when something exciting happens. The finesse stuff, the editorial stuff, will come from the person who's sitting beside me, like Enda McGinley, or it used to be Kevin McStay or Eamon Fitzmaurice. They're the ones with the All-Ireland medals and have managed All-Ireland winning teams. So I want to get their opinion on how something happened, why it happened, will it happen again? That's what they are there for, and to kind of bring their tactical knowledge to bear on it. Like, my thing, as far as I'm concerned, is fairly basic as to what I have to do. And as I said, the matches do go into these lull periods, and they're some of them can be quite lengthy, where you'll have teams hanging onto the ball, and then you'll have, we saw it with Mayo and Roscommon a few weeks ago, where Roscommon needed to be more. It needs to try and turn the ball over against Mayo towards the end of the match. Like, Mayo kind of held them at arm's length for the last 10 minutes of the game, because Roscommon had started the third quarter so poorly, and Mayo were so good, admittedly. But you kind of, there's mindsets with teams, and they defend together, they attack together, and I love I find the games fascinating. There's this kind of chess element, and who's gonna be able to impose their will and their tempo and their passage of play and their style of play on the other team. That's a real arm wrestle a lot of the time. So as a team and as a manager, if you can impose your way of playing on the other team, you're probably going to win. So I find all that stuff fascinating, and I get at times that on some occasions it can be quite challenging to watch. And I think there's recognition of that from Croke Park with the new that rules committee that Eamon Fitzmaurice is on, James Horan is on, Jim Gavin is heading it up, and I think they will just, I think I heard Eamon say on League Sunday a couple of weeks ago, they'll make little tweaks here and there, nothing radical. I think the attacking mark now will go on the bin and stuff like that. But, just to try and, I suppose, maybe make the thing a little simpler, a little bit more straightforward. maybe easier on referees with less rule, or less kind of fidgety and fussy rules. But yeah, like I think that's all positive. But like, look, we have a very fine product that people want to see, and everybody wants to win.
Pearse Stadium, the venue this Saturday. A tremendous double-header for Galway fans to look forward to this weekend. So I encourage all fans to get in there. But from your own perspective, is a ground like Pearse Stadium, is that the kind of ideal venue to be covering a game around this time of
Yeah,
year?
absolutely. Look, I've been in Pearse Stadium. I did the Connacht final there. I think Mayo won it in COVID, where there was like 100 people in the ground. Parking and traffic has never been better getting away from Salt Hill, which is always a challenge. But yeah, I've had some amazing days there. Some 31 degrees of heat at Connacht finals in the noughties and stuff like that. Absolutely incredible days. And I find it a great venue to commentate on because you're pretty much in the game. We're in that kind of, you'll see the scaffolding and stuff like that built on the side opposite the main stand. And like when it's full and when it's close to capacity, it's a great venue because the crowd are right in front of you, standing on that terrace down underneath where we'll do the commentary. Yeah, no, listen, it's a great ground to work in and work at because you're so close to the action. You're nice and low. Like, Croke Park is the Mecca and all those kind of things. It's fabulous, but you're actually very high. You're 7 floors up where we do the commentaries from, and at times you can kind of, if it makes sense, you can lose the perspective on the ball. Not all the time, but at times, and even shooting into the canal end at times, it can be quite sort of challenging. Just to kind of pick up the flight of the football and how high it's gone or flat or whatever. So yeah, Pearse Stadium is a great place to commentate in, and from that position that we have is fantastic. And like, I was there for the Galway Mayo match last year, and like, okay, it didn't go Galway's way, but it was a fantastic occasion. Nice sunny day, really big crowd, and yeah, you just feel like you're in the game when you're in Pearse Stadium.
The way Dublin have looked so far in the league there, it's a bit ominous this weekend for Galway with the Dubs coming to town, but there's a bit of excitement too. What can we expect this weekend from a Galway perspective?
Well, look, I suppose I haven't seen the team yet. I have the program here from the Monaghan game. I was having a look because I was in Clonus that day, and like very impressed with. Like, it was a big match for Galway to win, because like you go, okay, Monaghan's league run has sort of come off the rails. Like, it started so well with the Dublin match. That was a great result for them. And look, they've had injuries to deal with too, and they're trying to manage players back in. Rory Began is chasing his dream in the States, and more power to him. But he's a big loss as a leader, never mind as an amazing goalkeeper. But he's a very important voice in that dressing room. So look, you wouldn't blame Rory. I think it's a great opportunity for him, and I hope it works out brilliantly. But it's been a loss for Monaghan, no question about that. But Galway were, you look at the Galway panel, like Pádraig Joyce must be working off a huge number of players. Like, it must be up at near 45, with the list of players that are missing. And you see, this is what I'm saying. I suppose the point about the match has been so close together. If like Damien Comer is borderline for this Saturday against Galway or against Dublin, like, is Pádraig going to risk him with the possibility that maybe he breaks down again or is not fully fit and not fully right, and then maybe he's out for an even longer time? So these are the challenges that intercounty managers have. But the list of players that Galway are missing is phenomenal. Now, I will say, like, I've been real impressed with O'Flaherty and Sweeney from Salt Hill, Knocknacarra. I know I have a little bit of a bias there because I have friends at the club. But they've been really good on that left-hand side for Galway. They've combined very, very well. Mars played real well in the middle of the field. Sean Kelly's back he got a lot of minutes the last day. And like, again, there's that managing somebody like an incredible leader for Galway, managing him back in. So I know Pádraig Joyce was joking about, their form is better away from home than it is at home. And the Monaghan thing, the goals were very well taken. There was a bit of opportunism in one or two of them, but that's what you want, and you want your main scoring forwards to be poachers and to always expect the best in any situation. Is the ball going to come off the post, or is the goalkeeper going to struggle to catch it? They've got to be ready to pounce, and they were. So I was really impressed with Galway the last day, and you could, like, I did a little interview with Pádraig afterwards, and And he was, relieved is the wrong word, but he was just happy. Look, we've got onto 5 points. Okay, aren't they going to Killarney in the last game?
Yeah, Killarney some week. So
yeah, so like that's a huge one. But maybe the away form, maybe Galway just want to be on the road again. And Galway Kerry's always the two of those, for as long as I can remember, those two of those teams always bring out the best in each other. As a spectacle, go back to the All Ireland final and all that stuff. So, I suppose for Porrick, this is just like stay in Division 1, get enough points to stay there, and then we get lads back for the championship, because like his main aim is Connacht title and Sam Maguire,
Just from listening to Porrick, it seems like he's going to target this weekend because they haven't won a game at home this year. They haven't beaten Dublin in league or championship. Not in this decade, anyways. I think it was around 8 or 9 in Parnell Park in a league game, and those records are something Porrick often alludes to.
Yeah, no, and I think actually didn't he make a similar remark about a Galway team winning in Clonus?
Yeah.
Beating Monaghan and Clonus, so that hadn't happened before in the league. So he's very conscious of these things, and like I wouldn't say he deliberately goes seeking them out, but somebody would whisper it in his ear. Oh, by the way, we haven't beaten Dublin since XYZ. So, he kind of take these things on board. Look, I think Paul, like, people were talking about Dublin's win over Kerry being a sort of a statement victory. And that's a kind of cliche, but I know it's been used for the rugby guys playing Scotland on Saturday in Dublin. But I think that would do a massive amount for confidence for Galway, for all the young players, which the win in Clonus did. That like there's so many new players in and around that squad, with all the experienced guys hopefully coming back and getting fit again. So Dublin are in real good form. They have, they have really hit the ground running after a slow start, after a really ordinary start, actually, Roscommon and Mayo and stuff. And you're kind of, hang on, what's going on here? And all of a sudden, something has just brought them to life. And maybe it was Kerry. It probably was the sight of that jersey. And again, they, what they do to each other and stuff. One sees the other jersey, it brings about a reaction. So, yeah, it would be a nice game for Galway to win. I don't think Porrick Joyce will be losing any sleep over it. Priority is just to stay in that division. They've had, that so many players out injured, and that to me kind of frames and it sits over everything for Galway this year. You've got to, okay, teams can go on runs with a load of kids playing. In this day and age, and in that Division 1, it's kind of unlikely that you're going to get a huge amount of consistent run of really good results with a lot of younger players and some of your main stars unavailable.
How will they approach this weekend, do you think?
Galway.
Yeah.
Oh, listen, win. I think like it's I think like they all go out to try and win. I don't think they'll be hanging around. I haven't looked at the weather forecast. I don't know what that's going to be like.
I'm sure we'll have a breeze.
Absolutely, and probably a bit of rain too. But I think the whole country has been rain everywhere. The weather's been terrible. So who plays with the breeze, who plays against it, all those kind of decisions. Like Dublin will be mad into this as well, because they've hit a nice little run of form. They seem to, like, they'll just, again, like all the teams, well, maybe it's easier for Dublin because of Leinster and the way Leinster has gone, that they can break the year up into 3, which they used to do when it was very spread out. So you'd have the league first, then the Leinster Championship. And, I suppose the time challenge last year with the condensed season was such a big issue for the S&C people in every county, because it was all so wedged together with, very little recovery time between games. So, they'll still be able to, they'll be at a certain level of fitness now. Then it ramps up again and all the teams will do this. Then it ramps up for the provincial championship, and then hopefully, for all of those teams, quarterfinals and semi-finals and the final. So they will have had a good look at it last year, and you can say, because Dublin won the All Ireland, that worked. But all again, the elite teams, they're never standing still, and they're going to say, right, we have to change things up, or we have to mix this up or mix that up. People have maybe been surprised that Dublin have kind of been so good so early in the year, but I think they needed to do that because they were so off the pace in those first 2 games. And I think they needed to make a statement. So look, I hope and Dublin can do the defensive stuff when they need to. You saw with Galway and Clonus when they went direct and when they played fast, attacking, front-facing football. that it worked for them, and they got 3 goals out of it and a lot of really nice points. Like, look, Galway always have the players. There's a, the younger guys, O'Curry and all these fellas, wonderful footballers, and just give them the ball, they'll do their stuff. Of course, that's risky down at the other end, but wouldn't it be nice to kind of have a real shootout between the two of them? I'd love that. Saturday night in Salt Hill with that kind of stuff, and like the Dublin fans, okay, there'll be Limerick people there as well. That'll be a great occasion, actually. Hopefully it's not too cold or too wet, but you've 4 fantastic teams playing, and hopefully a big crowd there to see it, and a good night in Salt Hill, perhaps on Saturday night.
Is John Maher the man to be given the task to go after Brian Fenton on Saturday?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, he has. Absolutely, and I'd say he'd relish that. Like, I've been real impressed with him for the last 2 years. Kind of. Would you describe last year as sort of his breakout season?
Yeah.
And he was very impressive. And look, he took his goal well the last day. He's a big, powerful unit. He gets around the field. There's no lack of energy. And like, look, I suppose Fenton we've put up on a pedestal, rightly so, because of the footballer, this kind of Rolls Royce thing that he has become. I don't know how he feels about that description. I'm sure maybe he finds it funny, but he is the benchmark for the modern midfielder. Mar has a lot of the attributes that Brian Fenton does, and actually that's you're actually getting me excited about this now. I'm dying to see the two of them really going at it, because again, look, they're both strong enough. They're not going to let the other one isn't going to let the other dominate them in any way, if it's in their minds or physically or anything like that. They'll go at it properly. There's a lot of duels all over the place, but that's a really good one.
The other key one is Con has been absolutely sensational this year, the form he's been in. Now, Sean Fitzgerald has played a lot of fullback, but Con is this type of player, has that abrasive style of pace when he gets the ball. Do you think Galway are going to maybe just move Sean Kelly back just with the threat Con poses?
Maybe. Like again, Pádraig Joyce and his medical team have managed Sean really well back into the team. Like, didn't he start the last day in Monaghan? Yeah. I'm just trying to remember. I think he came in from the start or very close to it. But like, it's just about managing the minutes and getting, because he's naturally fit anyway. But coming back after an issue, it's got to be done in the right way. And Galway, from what I can see, I know nothing about the science of this, but they've been careful with him because he's such an important player. I'd like to see that battle. Like, Con has been, like, he was unreal against Kerry, and the kind of glint is back in his eye, and he's back in that kind of form that over the last 2 years wasn't there for whatever reason. Who knows? Like, somebody said, oh, maybe he's like completely injury free for the first time in a couple of years. That could very well be it. Again, I don't know. It's just idle speculation on my part, but he is in fantastic form. And like, people talk about traveling great distances to go and see David Clifford. When Con is in that kind of form, and when he's just like, because he just gets the ball, okay, he can kick his points and stuff, and be a playmaker as well, and bring other players in. But from a Dublin perspective, when he gets the ball and you just see him, his first instinct is, right, where's the goal? Get all these lads out of the way. I want the goal. So that is a joy to watch. Not necessarily if you're on the defending team and he's doing a number on you, but he is one of those players that kind of gets people off their seats. I would hope that we'll hear that kind of buzz around Salthill when he gets the ball and starts running at defenders, because it's very hard to stop.
Are Dublin All-Ireland favourites for you at the minute?
Probably, yeah. No, I'm not. Listen, if here's a surefire thing with me, Paul. If I tell you to put money on something, do not. And that's why I don't bet on anything. If it's Cheltenham, just not a good idea. Yeah, to be honest, yes. And like, that's not very original in any way, shape, or form. Like, most people would probably say that it's them and then Kerry, and then it's kind of the chasing pack of who's behind them. Galway would be in there, Armagh going to be in there. I'd put Donegal in there. And let's see who else kind of puts their hand up. Mayo, like, it's probably going to be the usual suspects in the last days again, and it'll pretty closely, maybe, okay, Armagh and Donegal would be slight exceptions with maybe Roscommon slipping out of that top 8 or something, because they've had issues. They were very good in the first half against Mayo in Castlebar, and then just, I don't know what happened. So there's going to be a big reaction from them the next day as well. But like those kind of, let's say, 10 teams, if we leave Roscommon in there, because I have a lot of friends in Roscommon and they'll destroy me. But it's not particularly original to say Dublin and Kerry will be the top two, and then it's the others trying to push up on them. Gaps closing and all that stuff. We'll see. It's still very early in the year. I know people have said it's ominous that Dublin are looking so sharp and looked so sharp against Kerry. Like, I was even surprised at that they were so good, on such a cold night, and just kind of so early in the year. But look, I suppose that's the way these teams are. It's like I said to you earlier on, you were talking about how will Galway and Dublin approach it. They just want to win. Like, Kerry wanted to win that night in Croke Park, so did Dublin. Dublin wanted it more and were able to play better. So, we'll see what way those things all spin out. But yeah, I'd have them as favourites. I know, over the years, there's kind of so many big characters have gone out of that dressing room, and then they came back and got them over the line as well. Cluxton and Fitzsimons and McCarthy and Dean Rock is gone this year, and but there's still and there is new talent coming through that are learning from the other guys. So it may not be the same dominance as it was before going forward, but even looking at Brian Howard and Derry and Niall Scully, they looked really on it, and this is March, and they were very, very impressive. I thought those two particularly. Padder O'Cuffy Byrne, they've had high hopes for him for many years. He's been really unlucky with injuries, but he's another huge powerhouse in the middle of the field. So there's all those bits there. Derry are worth the mention as well. My word, Mickey Hart's Derry, and they took so many players out of that Dublin game, which kind of skewed it a bit. I think you'd look at the results and maybe in a different way because of that. But look, Dublin to win it. But like, as I say, if I'm wrong, do not be surprised in any way, shape, or form. Could be anybody else. Could be Armagh.
Just on Galway, you mentioned there, the key is obviously surviving. You feel, just to be sure though, that they're going to need a point or even 2 points if they can get it in their final two games, just to be sure, because how tight Division 1 has been.
Yeah.
But what's stood out, if you're looking at Galway, that they've been able to... That Monaghan result was obviously huge, the Roscommon draw, and the Tyrone win. But what stood out to you recently where you've been impressed with one or two things from Galway?
Well, I suppose, look, to be able to sort of deal with adversity, when people are building these teams and they talk about leadership and, their culture and their values, and, because this has not been easy, and with all the players that are missing. Now, look, like Damien Comer isn't going to play for Galway forever. The same with Shane Walsh, or, Paul Conroy wasn't available the last day. Like, these are kind of generational players for Galway, massive talents, and they're not available. So it's up to the others to kind of step up. And I mentioned Sweeney and O'Flaherty and O'Curreen and Mar, and then Kelly is still there doing it. And it's the ability of the other players to kind of step up, lift their performances to fill in for the lads who aren't there. If you look at that, just looking at the team, like Dylan McHugh was fantastic the last day, one player of the match from DG Cahir. Like John Daly is just, I love watching him play. The vision he has, the passing ability. The boys in the full back line really good. It's a big panel. There's a lot of names that you're kind of going, oh God, what under 20 team was he on, and where did he come from? So like Porrig and Cian O'Neill have had to sort of spread the net out far and wide. Okay, they'd have an awareness of these players. That's the amazing thing about all of these inter-county setups, and it all feeds through. But you'll get players when you need them. But that these guys have been able to step up, and like Galway's first league win in Clonus, Monaghan is they're such a sticky team. Look at all the big results that they've had, the longevity of their stay in Division 1, regularly beating Dublin home and away, and that doesn't happen by accident. So, I thought I was really impressed with them the last day to be able to deal with the sort of stuff that was thrown at them, and for these other players to be able to step in and keep the performance level high. And you're right about, like, 5 points is kind of weird. It'd be really unlucky to be relegated on 5 points, but 6 would be an awful lot better. It's going to be look, it's going to be tough to get. Maybe the draw on Saturday night. You never know. Killarney, it's a long journey down. Like Galway have had, this division has been real stretched out in terms of travelling distances, huge, vast distances for all the teams to travel. And it's like overnights in hotels and massive expense and all that sort of thing. So there's a lot to deal with. I'm sure it's fun too as well. You know what I mean? Like in terms of getting the group together and building the camaraderie, particularly with newer, younger players being sort of exposed to the bigger legends in the group and stuff like that. So just all of these things that these young guys have to deal with, and so far they've dealt with it really well. So we'll see how they deal with it now on Saturday.
Go ahead to cause a massive upset here at the weekend. What needs to happen?
Oh, look, do you know what? Probably several goals. I think stop the usual thing. Stop Con, stop Fenton getting into his stride, and try and deal with Ciaran Kilkenny and the playmaking ability that he has. I've been impressed with O'Hanlon in goal. That acrobatic save he made the last day. Just get in their faces, take it to them. And I think like Galway will do that. Dublin are going to have their kind of good passages of play in the match. That's for certain. They could get a goal or two themselves, but if you're going to beat Dublin, you need to bag a couple of goals. And a lot of 10 or 11 of the players need to kind of hit 8, 9 out of 10. And then, the other ones maybe need to go higher or be pretty close behind. So, it's going to be a test, but they are the All-Ireland champions. They didn't do that by accident. So, this is like Galway have designs on the Sam Maguire, and this is a perfect opportunity to see with several frontline stars not around. This is a perfect opportunity to see how they match up against the team that are currently All-Ireland champions.
How's it going to go for you on Saturday?
Do you know what, Paul? Because we're talking on your podcast, I'll say a draw. But again, I'm the worst predictor in history. I just hope it's a really good game, and I think it will be. Like both teams are able to do what they need to do if they have to be, drop into their defensive shape and kind of do the counter-attacking stuff. There's loads of pace in both teams to do that, or they'll just go at you. Like it's one of the things they've said about Dublin over the years. A bit like the Limerick hurlers, they'll play you however you want to play them. If you want to go real ties and all that stuff, they've adapted to all that stuff. The kind of one dimensional is unfair, but the kind of all out attack 2014 thing was undone by Donegal, and then that defeat kind of massively changed Jim Gavin's approach then, and it became a little bit more pragmatic and but still hugely effective. But I think if we get a really good attacking game, lots of scores, and may the best team win. Who knows who that will be? But it would be nice for Galway if they got onto 6 points and just kind of knocked this thing on the head before going to Killarney.
Absolutely. I think that's what we're all hoping for this weekend. But that's all we do have time for on today's podcast. Thanks a million to Darragh for coming on.
Cheers, Paul.
The man to be given the task to go after Brian Fenton on Saturday.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, he has. Absolutely. And I'd say he'd relish that. Like I've been real impressed with him for the last 2 years, kind of. Would you describe last year as sort of his breakout season?
Yeah.
And he was very impressive. And look, he took his goal well the last day. He's a big, powerful unit. He gets around the field. There's no lack of energy. And like, look, I suppose Fenton we've put up on a pedestal, rightly so, because of the footballer, this kind of Rolls Royce thing that he has become. I don't know how he feels about that description. I'm sure maybe he finds it funny, but he is the benchmark for the modern midfielder. Mar has a lot of the attributes that Brian Fenton does, and actually that's you're actually getting me excited about this now. I'm dying to see the two of them really going at it, because again, look, they're both strong enough. They're not going to let one isn't going to let the other dominate them in any way, if it's in their minds or physically or anything like that. They'll go at it properly. There's a lot of duels all over the place, but that's a really good one.